The night was a damp whisper in the city, a drizzle that painted the sidewalks in reflections and stretched shadows beneath flickering street lamps. Inside the faded neon glow of Mel's 24-hour diner, the hum of a ceiling fan battled the faint clinking of cutlery and the murmur of a late-night radio playing 80s ballads. A man sat alone at a corner booth, his back hunched, his uniform stained from a hard day's work. Jack Dawson, 34, Ford janitor, single father, his hands rough and calloused, wrapped around a chipped ceramic mug of coffee he couldn't afford but needed to stay awake. Across from him sat his 5-year-old daughter, Lily, whose sleepy eyes blinked slow and heavy as she pushed the last of her cold fries around a paper plate. She wore a pink jacket that was too small now, but she insisted it was still her favorite. Jack hadn't had the heart to tell her it would be their last meal out for a while. Rent was due in 2 days, and his extra shifts at the hospital had barely made a dent. He tried to smile through the exhaustion, but it barely reached his eyes. Then it happened. She appeared. Not through the front door, not with any sound or warning. Jack just happened to glance up as Lily reached for her juice box, and there she was, pressed against the glass like a ghost from another world. A girl, no more than 11 or 12, stood barefoot on the wet sidewalk, her hoodie soaked and clinging to her frame. Her hair was stringy, matted from the rain, and her face, it wasn't just hungry. It was calculating, alert in a way that struck Jack like a punch to the gut.
She wasn't begging.
She wasn't pleading.
She was waiting.
He watched her eyes track a waitress clearing plates from an empty table, watched how her focus zeroed in on the tray of discarded food. Half a burger, a few onion rings, untouched toast. The waitress slid the tray toward the swinging kitchen doors and turned her back. And that's when the girl moved. In one silent motion, she slipped through the front door, her steps soundless on the linoleum floor. No one noticed her except Jack. She veered toward the tray, her hands lightning quick. She grabbed the toast, scooped a few fries, and yanked a napkin clean from the dispenser. She was halfway out the door when a sharp voice rang through the diner. "Hey! Hey! Get back here!" The manager, a balding man with a temper Jack had seen before, stormed out from behind the counter. The girl froze, her body tense like a cornered animal. Her eyes darted calculating again. Fight or flight. Jack stood up before he could think. "She's with me," he said loudly. The manager's heavy steps slowed. "You know her." "I do now," Jack said, stepping toward the girl. The manager looked from Jack to the girl and back again. "You feeding strays now?" "Dawson? She's a kid," Jack said. "She was hungry." "Not your kid?"
No, Jack said,
glancing at the girl. "But she's with me now." There was a pause, a moment where the world tilted, waiting to decide whether it would exit. But the manager grunted, threw up his hands, and muttered, "Fine, you're paying for whatever she took." Jack nodded. "Add it to my tab." He turned to the girl. "Come on. Sit." The girl hesitated. Her pride flared in her eyes, a deep, raw instinct that told her not to trust, not to depend, not to accept kindness. But hunger won. Slowly, she crossed the room and slid into the booth across from Lily. She held the toast like it was gold, her eyes watching everything. "Exits, staff, Jack." "What's your name?" Lily asked softly, chewing a soggy fry. The girl didn't answer at first. Then, in a voice that sounded like it hadn't been used in days, maybe weeks, she said, "Sky." Jack smiled gently.
"I'm Jack. This is Lily. You warm enough?"
She nodded once. Lily offered her the last of her juice box. Sky stared at it, then reached out and took it, her fingers trembling just slightly. She didn't drink it right away. She just held it like she needed proof it was really hers. They didn't talk much that night. Jack asked a few quiet questions. Where she was from, where she was going, but Sky either didn't answer or gave vague replies. She used words like around and somewhere. Jack didn't press. He'd been there once, years ago. After Lily's mother left without a word, he remembered the days when trust was too expensive, when you didn't know if someone offering you help would take more than they gave. The rain picked up outside as the clock ticked past 2 a.m. Jack stood and helped Lily with her coat, then looked at Sky. You got somewhere to sleep tonight. Sky didn't move, just stared down at her now empty plate. You can crash on our couch, Jack offered. No strings. Just a warm place for the night. She didn't answer. But when he opened the door, she followed. The apartment was tiny, one bedroom, a kitchenette, a couch that creaked like a haunted door, and a bathroom with a leaky faucet that sang every hour. But it was dry, and it was warm. Lily changed into her pajamas and curled up on the mattress with her favorite teddy bear, the one Jack had rescued from a dumpster and patched up with an old sock. Sky stood by the front door, soaking wet, shoes still off, her eyes scanning the space. You want something dry to wear? Jack asked. She didn't respond. He handed her a sweatshirt and some old sweatpants. Lily's outgrown these. They'll be short, but better than being cold. Sky took them. She didn't say thank you. But after she emerged from the bathroom, she looked smaller, more human. She sat on the couch with her knees drawn up and didn't ask for a blanket, but Jack gave her one anyway. She didn't fall asleep right away. Her eyes stayed open long after Lily's soft snores filled the room. Jack sat at the kitchen table, the dull yellow light casting long shadows across the chipped linoleum floor. He poured himself a half glass of tap water and rubbed his temples. He should have called someone. Child services, a shelter. Someone with the resources he didn't have. But he couldn't shake the way she had looked at that plate of scraps like it was a feast. The way her shoulders tensed every time someone raised their voice, even slightly. The way she didn't smile, didn't cry, didn't beg. She reminded him too much of himself when he was 21, jobless, alone, with Lily in one arm and a final notice in the other. He left the hallway light on for her. In the morning, he expected her to be gone, but she wasn't. Sky was up before dawn, already dressed, the kitchen clean.
Dishes washed.
Floor swept. She stood near the door, as if waiting to be told to leave. You hungry? Jack asked. She hesitated, then nodded. He gave her toast with jelly and half a banana. Lily offered her a plastic ring from her cereal box and said, You can have this? It's magic. Sky took it. She didn't say thank you, but she put it in her pocket like it mattered. Jack didn't ask her to leave. Not that day. Not the next. 3 days passed. Then a week. Sky never asked for anything. She never complained. She cleaned, helped Lily get dressed, even figured out how to fix the broken heater by tapping a loose wire and resetting the breaker. Jack came home once to find the remote working again for the first time in months. When he asked what happened, Sky just said, It was easy, and shrugged. It wasn't normal. None of this was. But Jack felt something shift, something familiar but long forgotten, hope. He didn't know where she came from, didn't know how long she'd stay, but he knew this much. She wasn't a problem to be solved. She was a person worth showing up for. And he would. Again and again. The second week with Sky felt like stepping into a story Jack didn't know he had been writing all along. She wasn't just a guest anymore. She was becoming part of the rhythm of their days. The silent thread sewing together the fragile seams of their makeshift family. Jack still didn't know her past, didn't press for it. Some kids needed time before they could peel back the silence and show what had hurt them. He'd seen enough brokenness in his own life to understand that healing didn't follow anyone's schedule. Sky was like a shadow that moved with purpose. She learned the layout of their apartment faster than Lily. She memorized which cupboard held what, how long the shower ran before the water turned lukewarm, and which side of the couch creaked less. She never asked for anything, but always gave more than was required. Folding laundry without being told, fixing Jack's broken clock radio, and even showing Lily how to balance her cereal box tower so it didn't collapse mid-breakfast. Jack was getting used to it. This quiet brilliance that radiated from Sky like static electricity, unseen but powerful. He saw it in the way she handled anything mechanical. She took apart the remote control one night just to see what was inside, then reassembled it perfectly and added a piece of tin foil where a contact had been worn out. It worked better than before. He started paying attention. One Saturday afternoon, Jack brought home a small box of old electronics he found discarded outside a repair shop. A DVD player that didn't turn on, an old keyboard missing some keys, and a cracked tablet screen. He offered them to Sky with a shrug, expecting her to maybe fiddle with them for an hour before losing interest. Instead, she studied them like ancient relics, laying them out on the living room floor, her eyes focused and steady. She began prying things open carefully, separating parts into neat piles. Circuit boards, wires, plastic casings. Within an hour, she'd turned the broken DVD player into a crude but functioning radio. Jack watched from the doorway, arms crossed, a mixture of awe and concern bubbling in his chest. "Where'd you learn how to do that?" he asked. Sky glanced up. "Online. Library videos? You've done this before." She nodded. "Sometimes I'd sleep near the back of the library. If I didn't get caught, I could watch tutorials on the public computers." Jack's stomach turned. He imagined her curled up behind bookshelves, trying to stay invisible, learning about transistors while other kids played in parks and had snacks packed by moms who didn't leave. "You ever go to school?" he asked carefully. "Sometimes. Kind of group homes tried, but I got moved a lot. When people don't want you, they find reasons." Jack felt something inside him splinter. She wasn't bitter when she said it. She said it like a fact, like weather, like truth. He called his old friend, Mr. Carson, the next morning. Retired now, Carson had once been the head of the science department at a high school across town. Jack had cleaned his classroom every night for a year, and they'd struck up an odd friendship built on sarcastic banter and mutual respect. "Science prodigy, huh?" Carson said over the phone. "How prodigy are we talking?" "Fixed a DVD player with a toothbrush and gum foil," Jack said. "Built a Bluetooth transmitter out of junk." Said she taught herself coding off library videos. Silence. "Bring her by," Carson said. "Let's see what she knows." Sky didn't want to go at first. She hated the idea of being tested, of standing in front of someone waiting to be told she was wrong. But Jack promised she didn't have to do anything. Just talk. Maybe show the old man her little projects. She sat at Mr. Carson's dining room table, fiddling with the inside of a wristwatch he'd handed her while he quizzed her on logic gates, voltage, and code languages. Sky answered between breaths, not to impress, but because the questions were too easy. Carson's eyes widened more with each answer. An hour later, he put down his notes and leaned back in his chair. "She's not just smart," he whispered. "She's gifted. Not the kind of gifted you put in an advanced class, the kind you write about in journals." Jack nodded, pretending to understand, though the pit in his stomach twisted again. Being a genius didn't mean the world got easier for you. Sometimes it meant you scared people. Over the next few weeks, Carson began mentoring Sky informally. Jack bought a whiteboard from a thrift store and mounted it on the hallway wall. Soon, The board was filled with equations and sketches of circuitry. Lily would color next to it on the floor, humming while Sky worked out complex physics problems. Jack took on more night shifts at the hospital to afford the small things. Extra food, bus fare, second-hand laptops. He even found an old coding textbook at a garage sale and left it on Sky's pillow. She devoured it in 2 days, and still, Sky remained silent about her past. One night, Jack came home early and found her on the fire escape, sitting cross-legged with her chin resting on her knees, staring at the moon. He slid the window open and stepped out. "Cold out here," she shrugged. "Want to talk?" She shook her head, but after a pause, she said, "I used to watch the sky a lot. When I lived in the shelter, I'd find the highest place I could, sometimes a roof, sometimes a stairwell window. I used to tell myself that if I could just reach the stars, maybe someone would notice me." Jack sat beside her in silence. "Do you think that's stupid?" she asked quietly. He looked at her for a long time before answering. "No, I think it's brave." She turned her head slightly, just enough for him to see the soft shimmer of tears in her eyes. "I don't want to disappear again." "You won't," he said. "Not if I can help it." A few nights later, everything changed. Jack had brought Sky to the hospital during his overnight shift. Lily was at a friend's house for a sleepover, and Jack didn't want Sky alone all night. She settled into the janitor's closet with her laptop bundled up in one of Jack's sweatshirts. She liked being near the server room. She said she could feel the energy in the wires. At 2:14 a.m., the hospital systems crashed. The monitors went dark. The nurses' station phones buzzed with dead signals. Computers blinked out. Doctors yelled. Patients panicked. Alarms stopped mid-chime. Jack had never seen anything like it. People ran in circles, flipping switches and rebooting hardware to no avail. The IT team was in chaos. The head tech, a man named Aaron, looked pale and sweaty as he tried to explain to the director that they couldn't locate the cause. It wasn't malware. It wasn't hardware failure. It was something else. Something they couldn't isolate. Then Jack heard a small voice behind him. "What OS do they use?" He turned. Sky was there, holding her laptop, her eyes gleaming with focus. Jack grabbed her arm. "Not now, Sky!" But Aaron was desperate. "What? Linux-based servers?" she asked. "Custom database shell? Did you patch the kernel after the last OpenSSL vulnerability?" The man blinked. "Why? Yeah, but how do you know?" "Where's the nearest terminal?" she asked. They led her to the control hub on the second floor, half out of disbelief and half out of hope. Sky cracked her knuckles and began typing. Commands flew across the screen. She opened scripts, rewrote patches, searched logs faster than Aaron could read them. "Wait, go back," he said once. That line, "How'd you?" "It's not the code," Sky said. "It's a recursive loop initiated by a memory leak in the backup sync. You tried to overwrite a corrupted node instead of isolating it. It's eating the call stack." She patched it in 7 minutes. By the 10th minute, monitors flickered back to life. The database reloaded. Everything returned to normal. And Sky, standing in her oversized sweatshirt with smudges of dirt on her cheek, walked back to the janitor's closet without saying a word. Nobody followed her, not right away, but someone had filmed it. By morning, the video had gone viral. Jack's phone blew up with calls from reporters, random strangers, and one hospital board member who wanted to know where the girl came from. Jack didn't know how to protect her from what was coming. But as Sky slept on the couch later that day, her arms wrapped around Lily's teddy bear, Jack sat in the chair by the window and made himself a promise. He would find a way, even if it meant going broke, even if it meant challenging every system that had failed her before. She wasn't just a genius. She was his responsibility now. The hospital lobby was eerily quiet the morning after the system crash, like the building itself was still recovering from the digital heart attack that had gripped it just hours before. Jack sat in the break room, nursing a cup of lukewarm coffee, his hands shaking just slightly, not from caffeine withdrawal, but from everything that had happened. He kept replaying the image of Sky at the terminal, typing faster than anyone he'd ever seen, surrounded by men in pressed shirts and expensive glasses who could only stand and stare while a barefoot girl in a hand-me-down sweatshirt fixed what they couldn't even identify. It wasn't normal, none of it, and the more Jack thought about it, the more afraid he became, not for her, but for what the world would do once it realized just how extraordinary she was. By mid-morning, the video of Sky restoring the hospital systems had hit 1,000 views. By noon, it was over 1 million. The footage had been uploaded by a nurse who happened to be filming her reaction to the crash when she noticed Sky walk in and start typing. The camera shook as she gasped and whispered, "That's the janitor's kid. Oh my God, what is she doing? Is she fixing it?" The footage showed it all. Sky's face calm and focused, the screen lighting up with code, the flurry of technical jargon flying from her mouth. The ending was cinematic, systems rebooting, lights flickering back on, and a stunned silence that spread across the control room like someone had just witnessed a miracle. Sky hadn't even known she was being filmed. When Jack picked her up later that afternoon from where she'd been waiting on a bench outside his building, her face was flushed from the sun, not from attention. She didn't check social media. She didn't even own a real phone. The only device she used was a cracked old laptop that she repaired every week with parts from the recycling bin. But the world had seen her. And now, it wanted to find her. By the time they got home, Jack had already received 7 calls from journalists, 2 from radio stations, and 1 from someone claiming to be a representative of a tech startup who wanted to offer Sky a full scholarship and future employment. Jack unplugged the landline and turned off his phone. He watched Sky as she sat cross-legged on the floor, quietly helping Lily put together a cardboard dollhouse they'd made from old cereal boxes. Her face was soft, peaceful even. There was no sense of the chaos she'd just caused, no understanding of the storm she had stepped into. Jack felt a knot form in his chest, one that didn't loosen even when Lily giggled and leaned against Sky's shoulder. He knew the world didn't like extraordinary kids. It liked to use them. That night, Jack lay awake staring at the ceiling while the box fan hummed beside him. His thoughts ran in loops. She was safe now. But what about next week?
Next month?
Next year? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. It was almost midnight. He got up cautiously, heart pounding. He peeked through the peephole and saw 2 figures, a man in a suit and a woman in a gray skirt suit holding a clipboard. He opened the door a crack. "Yeah, I'm in Streck." "Dawson?" The woman asked, professional and clipped. "I'm with Child Protective Services. This is my partner, Michael. We're here regarding a minor in your custody, Sky." His blood ran cold. "She's sleeping."
What's this about?
"Would like to ask a few questions. It's routine." Jack stepped outside and closed the door behind him. "What kind of routine gets you knocking on doors past midnight?" "There's a viral video. It shows a minor in an unsupervised hospital environment working on sensitive systems. The child is clearly underage and not legally documented in your household. We've had multiple reports." "Reports?" Jack asked. "From who?" She didn't answer that. "We're here to assess her situation. Where are her legal guardians? Has she been formally enrolled in school? Does she have a healthcare provider?" Jack felt his hands clench. "She has food. She has a bed And she has people who care about her. That's more than she had a month ago. I don't doubt your intentions, she said. But unless you're a licensed foster provider or legal guardian, you're violating child welfare protocols. Then tell me, Jack said, eyes sharp. If I let her go back into the system, what happens? She gets bounced from shelter to shelter again. Gets ignored until she runs away again, or until someone decides she's too broken to help. The woman's face tightened, but she said nothing. Jack stepped closer. She's not just smart, she's special. And she deserves to be somewhere safe, somewhere stable. The man beside her spoke for the first time. We'll file an initial report. Expect a follow-up. If you want to keep her here, Mr. Dawson, you'll need to start custody proceedings. I will, Jack said. She's not going anywhere. They left without incident, but Jack didn't sleep the rest of the night. In the morning, he called Mr. Carson and explained everything. The older man didn't hesitate. She needs a lawyer, Carson said, and we need to get ahead of this. If CPS gets traction, they'll try to place her. With who? Jack asked, pacing.
She has no family, no files.
They'll find someone.
Doesn't mean it'll be someone good. Carson helped Jack connect with a pro bono legal clinic. A woman named Rosa agreed to take the case after hearing Sky's story. She showed up with a leather briefcase, firm eyes, and a fierce sense of justice. She's a minor. No record of schooling, no confirmed family, but if you've provided shelter, food, education, and emotional care, you have a case, Rosa said, flipping through forms. We're going to petition for emergency guardianship. What are the odds they'll approve it? Jack asked. Depends how good we make you look, she replied without humor. In the meantime, the world kept on knocking. TV stations offered Sky appearances. Private schools called with scholarship offers. A major university in California reached out with interest in recruiting her into a special accelerated tech program. She wasn't even 13. Jack asked Sky what she wanted. I don't want to be a story, she said. I just want to learn. And I want Lily to keep her dollhouse. It was the clearest answer she could give. A week later, an envelope arrived, hand-delivered, and sealed with a strange logo Jack didn't recognize. Inside was a letter written in elegant cursive. It was an invitation. Eliza Morau, CEO of Vire ELIDYY Corporation, one of the largest AI firms in the world, wanted to meet Sky. Jack almost threw it away, but Rosa said, "This woman is a billionaire. If she's serious, she might have the power to change everything." So they went. The building was a palace of glass and steel, standing like a tower from the future. Jack wore his cleanest shirt. Sky wore her patched jeans and the same hoodie from that night at the diner. Lily insisted on coming, gripping Sky's hand the whole way like she was her favorite superhero. They were led to the top floor where Eliza Moreau waited. She was nothing like Jack expected. Short, elegant in her 60s, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to look through people like data. She extended her hand to Sky. "You're even younger than I thought," she said. "And smarter, I'd wager." Sky said nothing. She just watched her carefully. Eliza gestured to a screen on the wall. It came alive with a code problem. An unsolved optimization issue VRLY had been trying to crack for months. It was complex, elegant, and ruthless. Sky stared at it for 3 minutes. Then she walked up to the touchscreen, drew a loop, changed 2 variables, and rewrote a segment. The program ran. The answer blinked green. Eliza sat down slowly. "My God," she whispered. Jack looked at Sky, who simply stepped back and returned to her place by Lily. "She doesn't want fame," Jack said. "She doesn't want money. She wants a place where she can learn, safely." Eliza was silent for a moment. "Then we'll give her that," she said. We have a campus for gifted youth. It's not public. No press. Full scholarships. Housing. She'll be surrounded by people who understand her mind. And we'll find space for Lily, too. Jack blinked. You'd take Lily? She's her sister, isn't she? Jack's heart broke a little hearing those words. He hadn't said it out loud before. But it was true. By the time they left the building, Jack turned to Sky.
Are you sure about this?
She nodded. Only if we stay together. We will, he promised. Always? And for the first time since that night in the diner, she smiled. Not a full smile, not one she gave away easily. But enough. Enough to say she believed him. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains of the new apartment, golden and soft, brushing the edges of everything like a gentle blessing. The space still smelled faintly of fresh paint and new carpet, a far cry from the creaky old one-bedroom they used to call home. Jack stood in the kitchen, watching a pot of oatmeal simmer on the stove while Lily sat at the counter coloring with a cup of orange juice beside her. The apartment wasn't huge, but it had 2 bedrooms, warm water that never ran out, and a view of a quiet courtyard below. More than that, it had become a sanctuary. Sky was in her room, hunched over her desk, the morning light turning her hair into strands of fire as she scribbled notes across 3 notebooks at once. Circuits, algorithms, schematics. Her mind moved too fast for her hands to keep up, but she didn't complain. She never did. Instead, she stayed steady, focused, like the entire world would fall apart if she let go of a single equation. It had been 4 months since she'd walked into the control room of the hospital and stunned the world with her brilliance. Since then, life had changed in 100 ways. Eliza Morrow had been true to her word. Sky had been enrolled in the private research-based youth development program Viri to Y ran behind closed doors. No media. No fanfare. Just a quiet, high-security campus on the outskirts of the city where gifted children were mentored by leading engineers, scientists, and innovators. The environment was unlike any school Jack had ever seen. Students worked in labs instead of classrooms, collaborated on real-world problems instead of filling out worksheets, and received personalized curriculums based on how their minds worked, not how old they were. Sky thrived. The first week, she stayed quiet, barely speaking, but after she solved a coding challenge designed to take a month in just 2 days, the mentors began to pay close attention. She was given a private lab, access to server environments she used to only dream of, and unlimited scrap tech for her tinkering. And for the first time in her life, she had peers, other kids who spoke her language, not just in code, but in curiosity. Jack had been offered a full-time position managing facilities at the campus. It was more than a janitorial role. It involved overseeing maintenance systems, security operations, and logistical planning. He took pride in it. For the first time in years, he wasn't patching holes. He was building something. He had health insurance again. Paid vacation. A future. Lily was attending the sister elementary school nearby, a place with playgrounds, art rooms, and teachers who sent home cheerful notes about how kind and bright she was. She'd made friends, real friends, not just stuffed animals and Sky's old laptop. Jack picked her up every day after his shift, and they'd walk past the rows of community gardens, her small hand in his, her voice full of the kind of questions kids were supposed to ask about clouds and frogs and why birds sing so early in the morning. For a while, Jack felt like they'd found peace, like they could finally breathe. But peace doesn't last forever. It began with a letter. Sky had developed a new AI model, something small, just a weekend project, she claimed. but it caught the attention of one of the senior researchers. The model was a diagnostic algorithm that could detect early signs of degenerative neurological disorders based on subtle speech and motion patterns in children. Her idea came from watching Lily, how her younger sister moved differently when she was tired, how her speech patterns changed after naps, or when she had too much sugar. Sky had noticed patterns no one else had, and she'd turned those patterns into code. The project was quietly submitted to a national pediatric research board. They were stunned. Soon after, Sky was invited to present her work at the Global Summit for Innovative Youth Minds, a prestigious conference hosted by the World Institute for Technology and Progress. She was the youngest invitee by a decade. Jack received the letter while she was at school and sat with it for 20 minutes before deciding to tell her. He expected hesitation, maybe fear, but Sky read the letter, folded it, and said, "Will Lily be allowed to come?" Jack smiled. "I'll make sure of it." The summit was held in New York. The campus arranged their flights. Eliza herself even called to congratulate Sky and assured Jack she'd be with her every step of the way. The speech was scheduled for the last day of the summit, a closing keynote alongside teen inventors and young entrepreneurs. The night before the presentation, Jack found Sky sitting in the hotel hallway, barefoot in her pajamas, staring at the carpet. Her laptop was closed beside her. "You okay?" he asked, sitting next to her. She shrugged. "What if they don't like it?" "Ooh. The scientists, the doctors, the important people. What if they think I'm just a kid who got lucky?" Jack thought about it. "You didn't get lucky, Sky. You got noticed. But what if I say something wrong?" He looked at her, really looked at the small girl with the giant brain and the heart that was still healing. "Then they'll hear something real. And that's more than they usually get." She leaned her head against his shoulder. "Promise you won't leave when I go up there." "I'll be right there the whole time," he said. Front row. Lily too. The day of the summit was bright and cold. The auditorium buzzed with people from around the world. Scientists, philanthropists, politicians. It was the kind of room Sky used to avoid at all costs. Too many eyes, too many judgments. But she walked out onto that stage wearing the same hoodie from the night she met Jack. It had been patched, cleaned, and outgrown, but she insisted on wearing it anyway, said it reminded her where she started. She stood in front of 100 faces, then 1,000. The lights blinded her. The silence was thick. Jack held Lily's hand in the front row, and Sky began to speak, not with dramatic flair or rehearsed perfection, but with quiet clarity. She explained how her model worked, how she discovered it, how patterns of behavior could indicate something deeper, long before symptoms appeared. She showed videos, demonstrations, real-time analysis. The audience was silent, hanging on her every word. Then she said something Jack hadn't seen in her notes. "When I was small, I used to sleep near the back of libraries, sometimes on the floor. I read manuals instead of storybooks. I didn't understand the words sometimes, but I liked the diagrams. They made sense when the world didn't." She paused. "I didn't want anyone to notice me back then, because the people who noticed me always left, or yelled, or took things away." Another pause. "But then someone saw me, really saw me, and he stayed." Jack's throat closed. She didn't say his name. She didn't need to. "And now," she continued, "I don't want to be invisible anymore. I want kids like me to be seen and helped." Before they're too scared to ask, the room exploded into applause, not polite claps, a standing ovation. She stood there, stunned, blinking against the lights, her hand rising slowly to wave like someone who wasn't quite sure they belonged in that kind of moment. But Jack knew better. She belonged more than anyone. That night, She was offered internships, grants, partnerships. Eliza personally donated a seven-figure sum to ensure Sky's AI project would be developed into a real-world application. The research would go live within the year. When they got back home, Jack expected Sky to retreat, to hide from all the attention. But she didn't. She went back to work, coding, building, inventing, and laughing more. There were hard days still, nights when she woke up sweating, trembling from dreams she wouldn't talk about, days when she couldn't focus, when the past clawed its way into her present. But now she had something she'd never had before: safety, people, love. One evening, as Jack made dinner and Lily danced around the living room with a toy lightsaber, Sky sat at the table reading a book about quantum processors. She closed it suddenly and said, "I want to change my name." Jack looked up. "To what?" "Sky Dawson." He froze. "I mean, if you want me to," she added quickly, nervously. "I just thought, since you've already done everything else, it would be kind of nice if it was official." Jack stared at her, unable to speak for a moment. Then he walked over, pulled her into his arms, and whispered, "There's nothing in this world I'd want more." They filed the paperwork that week. Sky Dawson daughter. Genius.
Fighter.
Family. Their life wasn't perfect,
It was busy, messy, loud.
but it was real and it was theirs. And when the world tried to define her by headlines or viral videos, Sky would simply smile and keep building. Because she knew the truth. The man who saw her at her lowest hadn't just given her a meal. He'd given her a name, a home, a future. And in return, she'd rewritten all the rules, not just of code, but of love, of second chances, of what family really means. They weren't bound by blood. They were bound by choice. And sometimes that's the strongest bond of all.